Welcome to the Holy Neurospicy podcast. I'm Melody and I'm a normie, but spicy in different ways.
And I'm Leanne. I'm the neurospicy one with ADHD. We're not experts in theology or neurodivergence, but we're just speaking from our own lived experience. So on this podcast, we're going to wrestle through the things of life that make us go, holy, that sucks, or this is hard, and figure out how to be holy in all the messiness.
We might be a little different in the brain, but we follow the same God. Join us in our conversation as we navigate living out faith and glorifying God through our differences. We're starting off with a series on 1 Kings, where we'll read a chapter together each episode and share our thoughts and reflections on the passage. We're not experts and we're not doing a structured study, but if you're looking for real talks wrestling through the Bible and what it looks like to live that out in our different ways, you're in the right place.
Okay, so for today's episode, we're doing 1 Kings chapter 3. Solomon made a marriage alliance with Pharaoh, king of Egypt. He took Pharaoh's daughter and brought her into the city of David until he had finished building his own house and the house of the Lord and the wall around Jerusalem. The people were sacrificing at the high places, however, because no house had yet been built for the name of the Lord. Solomon loved the Lord, walking in the statutes of David his father. Only he sacrificed and made offerings at the high places. And the king went to Gibeon to sacrifice there, for that was the great high place. Solomon used to offer 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, "Ask what I shall give you." And Solomon said, "You have shown great and steadfast love to your servant David my father, because he walked before you in faithfulness, in righteousness, and in uprightness of heart toward you. And you have kept for him this great and steadfast love, and have given him a son to sit on his throne this day. And now, O Lord, my God, you have made your servant king in place of David my father, although I am but a little child. I do not know how to go out or come in. And your servant is in the midst of your people, whom you have chosen, a great people, too many to be numbered or counted for multitude. Give your servant, therefore, an understanding mind to govern your people, that I may discern between good and evil, for who is able to govern this your great people?" It pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this, and God said to him, "Because you have asked this, and have not asked for yourself long life, or riches, or the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding to discern what is right, behold, I now do according to your word. Behold, I give you a wise and discerning mind, so that none like you has been before you, and none like you shall arise after you. I give you also what you have not asked, both riches and honor, so that no other king shall compare with you all your days. And if you will walk in my ways, keeping my statutes and my commandments, as your father David walked, then I will lengthen your days." And Solomon awoke, and behold, it was a dream. Then he came to Jerusalem, and stood before the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and offered up burnt offerings and peace offerings, and made a feast for all the servants. Then 2 prostitutes came to the king and stood before him. The one woman said, "O my lord, this woman and I live in the same house, and I gave birth to a child while she was in the house. Then on the 3rd day after I gave birth, this woman also gave birth, and we were alone. There was no one else with us in the house, only we 2 were in the house. And this woman's son died in the night, because she lay on him. And she arose at midnight, and took my son from beside me, while your servant slept, and laid him at her breast, and laid her dead son at my breast. When I rose in the morning to nurse my child, behold, he was dead. But when I looked at him closely in the morning, behold, he was not the child that I had borne. But the other woman said, No, the living child is mine, and the dead child is yours. The first said, No, the dead child is yours, and the living child is mine. Thus they spoke before the king. Then the king said, The one says, This is my son that is alive, and your son is dead. And the other says, No, but your son is dead, and my son is the living one. And the king said, Bring me a sword. So a sword was brought before the king. And the king said, Divide the living child in 2, and give half to the one and half to the other. Then the woman whose son was alive said to the king, because her heart yearned for her son, O my lord, give her the living child, and by no means put him to death. But the other said, He shall be neither mine nor yours. Divide him. Then the king answered and said, Give the living child to the first woman, and by no means put him to death. She is his mother. And all Israel heard of the judgment that the king had rendered, and they stood in awe of the king, because they perceived that the wisdom of God was in him to do justice. Okay, so 1 Kings 3. Also, if my voice sounds rough, I'm kind of sick, so yeah.
I think the first verse, I'm kind of confused. It said that Solomon made an alliance with Pharaoh, king of Egypt,
Right.
married his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay?
It's not.
Oh, okay. I was like, something feels wrong here. I'm like, I thought they were like the enemy.
Yeah.
Kind of, you know?
It's also like in the I think early on in like Numbers and in Deuteronomy, like there's laws against marrying with the other nations because it's like, oh, because they'll lead you astray, and you'll like follow their gods and their idols.
That was actually specifically in Exodus as well.
Yeah.
Like God was very, very specific about like taking over the different kingdoms. Sorry, my dog, Eden. Eden, stop.
I think there's another dog outside.
Yeah. Eden. Stop. Okay. Quiet. So then in Exodus,
Yeah.
I remember God very specifically said that when you take over the different kingdoms, do not ask them to bring tribute or something like do not ask them to give you tribute. Do not intermingle with them. So like do not have children with them and stuff like that, right? So very, very specific in terms of like making sure that it's the kingdoms are like separate. They're actually, I think it says to make sure that the people in the kingdom are basically erased. Like in no way should they come together.
Yeah.
And that the people from the other kingdoms, it'll be a snare to the Israelites because they worship a different god.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's also interesting because like this first section, it also talks about sacrificing at high places.
Yeah.
And like that was a pretty common thing for like all the nations to do, like to sacrifice to all their gods in high places. So there's also like not only are we starting off with like, oh, he's marrying outside of like he's breaking God's commandment in terms of marrying with an Egyptian.
Yeah.
And then he's also allowing the people to continue sacrificing at high places.
Even he himself did it.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of kind of like this, oh, like he's kind of like making mistakes or like he's breaking God's law in different things, but it's like the hints or like the foreshadowing of like how he's gonna fall, like how his downfall is gonna come around.
And this is just the start.
Yeah.
But then I was like, okay, well, I guess it kind of makes sense because a temple was not built yet. So what is he and the people supposed to be doing if they wanted to bring offerings to God without offering it through the high places?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they should have the tabernacle.
Oh, so they should still have it
So
then?
I guess it would be that. Yeah.
But it also says like they were still sacrificing at the high places, meaning that hasn't changed. Then that makes me think like, does that mean that during David's reign as well, that's what they were doing?
Yeah, possibly, I guess.
So they're only supposed to do sacrifices and offerings in temples or tabernacles?
Yeah. So primarily in the tabernacle, and then I think once the temple is built, it kind of everything inside the tabernacle kind of gets moved in there, and they replicate the structure and stuff. So
And that's kind of odd that they just wouldn't like that they would be still offering in high places. I'm just really curious to like, what's the significance of high places?
I mean, in terms of like significance to other like idols or gods, or
Like, I guess why do they want to offer in high places versus like on the ground?
I wonder if it's like they feel like it's closer.
Like physically
Yeah,
closer
yeah.
to God.
And like, I mean, if you look back, like it's also like a lot of the big early encounters with God. There's like Moses at Mount Horeb, like when he receives the Ten Commandments. That's like on a mountain.
Yeah.
And then, sorry, I'm remembering another example, but I think it's post Samuel, so that's or post Solomon, so that's not a relevant example. But yeah, yeah, I was thinking about Elijah, but that's after.
And I don't know how accurate this is, but via Google search. This is while initially used for worshiping Yahweh, they became primarily centers of idolatry dedicated to pagan gods like Baal and Asherah, symbolizing Israel's disobedient syncretism and struggling with fidelity to God.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that kind of makes sense because in Exodus it was saying, hey, don't commune with these people. You're going to be basically worshiping their God if you do.
Yeah.
And I guess in many ways, this is like actually showing that maybe not slow, but it's showing how they are now conforming
Yep.
with what the pagans do.
Yep. Exactly. It's I think it's interesting that it starts with this, but then it goes into like how Solomon loves God and walks in his ways, and how like even though he's sacrificing at like this great high place, God still appears to him and speaks to him and like has this whole interchange.
It kind of feels like ultimately it's about his heart for God. Like, even if he's doing kind of things that are wrong, perhaps he wasn't aware. I don't know if that's possible, but because especially if God gave him wisdom as well.
I wonder if it's more like it's to some degree yes his heart, but I think it's also like God's grace, and that it's not like God is like, oh, like you did this one thing wrong and like I'm cutting you off forever, but that like he's still in this relationship with Solomon and like talking with him, and guiding him, but like we still see, or we'll see throughout Kings like how these like little things that Solomon's doing like are just kind of the precursor of like how it leads him astray eventually. So yeah.
And I am just reading one chapter by one chapter. So it's very exciting for me.
Yeah.
Because right now he seems great, other than these little mistakes.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Yeah. It's kind of like God is kind of meeting him where he's at.
I also think, like, technically he didn't start this whole process. Like, everything was already intermingled by the time he was born, right? And then he was raised a king. So I think the interesting thing about that is how it is still true for us today in terms of generational things. Like, our, what's it called? The things that are inherited to us, whether it be trauma, whether it be spiritual things like spiritual curses, if you guys believe in that. And so it's interesting because it shows kind of the life. I think it's a contrast, right? You see his heart for God.
Yeah.
And what he would ask God for is not, as he specifically says, that you haven't asked for, what was it, riches, right?
Yeah, riches or like conquering enemies or long life.
Yeah. Oh, verse 11, right?
Yeah.
That he hasn't asked for wealth for yourself or whatever.
Mm.
So it kind of shows that he does have an upright heart, and but it kind of shows the lineage that he comes from and the mistakes that were made before him.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it plays more in our life than we suspect and that we think. You know, how our parents treated us, how they lived their life, and you know, then then we start talking about like epigenetics and that type of stuff too, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, I just find that really relatable in that sense, where perhaps it's something that we need to kind of think about and look at, and even pray against, right? So that and be revealed to us by God.
Yeah. Like to, I guess, reflect and question what we're used to doing, in terms of like, not just like blindly questioning everything, but like looking at like, oh, why do we do the things we do, and does it actually align with who God is and what He commands us to do?
Yeah. And even the things we're taught as children, right? Like when we come out, I feel like we're kind of like a blank slate in a way, although we have our own personalities. But the things that our parents gathered in life and their knowledge, their wisdom, their understanding of the world, like that is transferred onto us through knowledge or through experience, right? Even those things we have to question too, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It's kind of like refreshing our minds, our thoughts, refreshing our spirits, so that everything, like absolutely everything in life, is actually directed by God. It's, in a way, it's like pressing the reset button, but it's not so easy. Like you only reset like one tiny thing at a time.
Yeah, yeah. I guess on the note of like revisiting things that we were taught growing up, I think one thing I've been thinking about recently is like, so in like the Chinese culture, we're taught like different things, like to be like haoshen, so like to be like obedient and like to care for your elders and like provide back as you're an adult, and like it's more than just kind of regular obedience, I guess.
Yeah. It's expectations.
Yeah, and then it's kind of like it's built up into such a thing where it's like it's almost like morally wrong if you're not. And so there's like kind of, I feel like, especially like growing up in a Chinese Christian culture, it's like that, and then you like weave in, and oftentimes it gets like what gets woven is like, oh, but like God commanded you to honor your parents. So it's like, okay, like, so to what degree is like all the little things that in the Chinese culture we're like, oh, this you have to do all of this to be considered haosen, or to be like, that the right level of obedient. But how much of that is actually in like a moral sense, or of like in terms of like obeying God? How much of that is actually like specifically obeying God versus how much of that is just culture?
Yeah.
And like there's little things like where it interplays. Like, so let's say I was listening to like another podcast and I heard this example where it's like, this is more for like a parent and a kid, and then the parent's like, okay, like get in the car now, we have to go, and like the kid is like, oh, why do we where are we going, like what are we doing, and so like if we're looking at it from like a neurodivergent lens, the kid's looking for clarity and just wants understanding for like why things are changing unexpectedly. But from a parent's perspective, it would be like, like, oh, maybe it's something that is really urgent that they have to just get started moving, and like they don't have time to explain, and they're just like, why aren't you obeying me right now? And then if we were looking at it from a Chinese culture perspective, it's like you're disobeying and you're dishonoring your parent. But the intent might not actually be that you wanted dishonor or that the child wants to dishonor, but that the child is seeking clarity. And so it's like one of those things where it's like it could be disobedience in the sense of like you're not honoring your parents, but maybe the intent isn't there. But culturally, and maybe neurotypically, it's like, oh, this is dishonoring the parent. So it's like really interwoven. I think how, what the perspective is on a simple action like that. So.
I think it must be confusing too. It's like, with you being raised in both a Chinese and a Chinese Christian kind of environment, I'm sure that there's a lot of like intermingling of Chinese culture as a Christian expectation too.
Yeah.
Like, because I wasn't raised in a Christian church.
Yeah.
And also my parents, I would say my mom is very much not traditional. So even though I am Chinese, like, I'm not really affected necessarily too much by that. My mom would always say to me that, you can always talk back if you believe that you have a reason to. Like, so if I think that my authority is wrong, then I can talk back. And that's something that
that's very different.
Yeah, very, very different from Chinese culture. I think it was because of my mom's background in terms of like what she experienced in life.
Okay, yeah. Makes sense.
On the flip side, then I become also I don't know if I become, but I mean genetically. Genetically, I think like I'm just a very rebellious, like kind of a rebellious person in the sense that like I don't just listen. You have to explain to me why. But I don't know. I mean, like, pros and cons, I think, like, personally, I think I like doing that and having that because I don't live blindly.
Yeah.
And just believe in what I'm told. And so, like, I think it's interesting because then when you are intermingling Chinese culture or any culture, matter of fact, with a Christian culture, now there's so much intermingling of like, well, what is actually what God has told us in the way that we need to obey versus our, Chinese background.
Yeah. Because,
like, yeah, so I think I definitely did not get the same experience when it comes to obedience.
Yeah, I like literally got told once like, oh, like the Bible tells you to like obey your parents. Like, why aren't you obeying? So
does it actually say obey? Because
or like honor.
It's just honor,
yeah,
right?
But a lot of times it gets taken as obey.
Yeah, which I think honor is quite different from obedience.
Yeah, I think the tricky thing is like, especially when you're a really young child, though.
Yeah.
Is that like they're a lot closer.
Of course.
Because also like you don't have as much, I guess, wisdom.
Yeah.
To take care of yourself, anyways. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So how does that actually play into being, like, autistic? Because I know rules and, things that are kind of like, it has to be this way, which I assume that is also kind of like a big aspect of moral right and wrong as well.
Yeah.
Like, how does that kind of play into your life then?
I feel like definitely, especially growing up, I was like very rigid on the rules. And I think when it comes to like as a kid, when I had something that I didn't agree with my parents on, I would feel really bad because I'm like, oh, I'm like not only disobeying them from culture or whatever, but it's like, oh, I'm like disobeying God, and like I was taking it very literally in that sense, which I think looking back, I probably didn't need to for the situation. But yeah, like I think there's that. And then like I don't have as much of the PDA or like the like that. Like I'm definitely more on the side where I don't know if this is like more the Chinese side or like just people pleasing, but I tend to like kind of just go with whatever other people say. Um, I think to the degree that even if it's like a rule where I like really feel really strongly about, I'll kind of like override it because other people are saying something else, which is pretty bad. But
Understandable.
yeah, I don't know where I was going with that.
I guess how like how the autism kind of affects the moral right and wrong as well, and kind of how that plays into obedience. Like, I don't know, it's quite mixed. Like the whole multiple topics is kind of like mixed
Yeah,
and mingled into each
so
other.
many layers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like on the whole, I would say it would take me to taking things a little more legalistically than maybe I should in some of the cases. And it becomes, I think, very hard to see the in between like because rules aren't, they're kind of like general a lot of the time, like they don't account for every single case. So there might be scenarios where like the letter of the law is being broken, but the spirit of the law isn't necessarily. And so it's really hard to sit with that like grayness
Yeah.
because it's like for the autism it's like no, but it's literally saying this and we're not doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because in parts of the Bible, like, I guess it was specifically Psalms, right? Where it's more poetry,
Yeah.
where it's like not because it's poetry, then it's not usually taken literally.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's kind of interesting too, where it's like then you have to kind of learn that and be like, oh, so I don't take this aspect of the Bible literally, word for word.
Yeah, like I think for me at least that has been easier because I have a lot of like because I read a lot and I've done a little bit like I've done more Bible study and like I've had a lot of informal and formal education on like how to study the Bible. So I think generally like I know if a passage is supposed to be like prescriptive and telling you an instruction versus if it's just descriptive or if it's like poetry. It's more like I think the application of it where I take it more literally, where it's like, oh, this becomes the rule for everything. But sometimes it's not exactly.
Right. So how exactly did you end up navigating that tension?
Who said I'm navigating it well? I don't know.
Like the obedience aspect at least, like, or is that still kind of like a current struggle?
I think it's more current just because, like I think because I was only diagnosed recently. I think it's hard to see where I think literally until it's pointed out to me. So a lot of things now it's like, oh wait, I didn't realize that I was thinking literally about this. And so now I have to kind of go back and be like, okay, so what would be like the non-literal or like what would be the way to approach it with grace without being so like to the letter. And then I think some things like, so for example, I've been thinking about like what it looks like to like love others, and it's like okay, well, what like for others, for me to love others and obey God in that way, is it that they feel that they receive the love, and then because then to some degree it becomes like, okay, like, especially for like, if it's me to like a neurotypical, does that mean I have to do all like the masking, like the small talk, or the like the eye contact to make sure that they're feeling heard, and that's how they feel loved, but like it but then that's like just really difficult to do, and then sometimes I just don't have the capacity to do that. And so then it's like, okay, so like, I'm just tired and I don't have the capacity to do this on a consistent basis. So am I not loving them? Like, you see how like it's like taking it very extremely. When it's like, okay, well, but like, what about like, okay, so then is it for me to obey God and loving others? Is it that I I just have to love them when I have the capacity to do so? But then like, we're also called to be to sacrifice ourselves. So wouldn't the sacrifice be to love them even when I don't have the capacity? Or and then there's the factor of like, okay, but like, what if, is it supposed to be that like I'm supposed to love them out of the love that God gives me? But then like, on a practical sense, doesn't that still also look like when I don't have capacity? So it gets like a little murky like that. And I don't think I've really figured out what the right answer is, or if there is a right
Yeah.
answer.
Would you be able to explain to the audience very quickly, like, what it looks like what is difficult for you when it comes to the social aspect of loving a person?
Um,
Like what you mentioned with the eye contact
yeah,
and small
yeah.
talk.
Like, I mean, so like an example would be like, so I think this is definitely more for people I'm not as close to or comfortable with. So for example, like if like at church, when we have time after service and like we're just in the foyer and like mingling with people, if I'm pretty low capacity, like if I didn't sleep well, or if it's been like a really rough season, then it's really hard for me to like be around a lot of people, because it's like loud, because there's all the other conversations going on. There's a lot of people in the area that I'm aware of, and then like the quote unquote right way to engage with others and show them love would be to like make eye contact, and then like kind of ask them like, oh, how are you doing? And then, but it's always like, the small talk transition where it's like all superficial, like, oh yeah, I'm doing great, okay, how about you? And like nothing tangible is actually said, but then that's how people like feel checked in on, or like feel cared for, or like there's some sort of relationship, even like, even though we're not deep friends. It's like, oh, like, they feel like they appreciate that, I asked about them, or like, or if like I remember things that they've mentioned before, and I'm like, oh, like, how was your trip or whatever. But and like, to some degree, I think there is like a level where I sometimes am able to do that out of like pure like interest in the person and how they're doing. I think it's definitely a lot easier when it's people I'm closer to.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when it's like people I'm not, then it feels like I have to like really put in the energy to do that. And then, if stack that with like multiple people, and then a lot of times it's also not really the environment where it feels like they like it's the time to jump into like a deeper question where I would actually be able to be more invested. But then that's kind of just how the whole small talk thing goes, I guess, and that's how people like prefer to be like checked in on, or like at least kind of at that more superficial early stage of conversation. So then it's like, okay, if I'm low capacity, I don't have the energy to make small talk. I don't have the energy to talk to people. I just want to stand in the corner and where it's quiet and like not look at people.
Yeah.
But that really doesn't look like loving to others at all. So
And people would be like, "Are you okay?"
yeah, right. So like, how do I find that in between, where like I do what's, or I show that I care to other people, and I check in and genuinely like actually check, like see how they're doing, while also recognizing like what capacity I have, and yeah.
I think from what I'm, I guess, taking from it is like perhaps there's kind of two aspects. I think, we're not like robots. So I think we can't always, even as a neurotypical, have the capacity to care for someone. I think especially when we are personally going through a lot or when we're exhausted, the previous day, I think that is quite normal. So perhaps that's just kind of how it is, where it's like because we live in an imperfect world, because we are imperfect people, it's like to be okay and to understand that sometimes we can't have the capacity to love the way that we want to love or to show people God's love the way we want to, right? And I think that's okay. And I think like that's all about, I think that's part of being in a community where maybe those days is not you supporting others, but people will support you.
Yeah, I think it's. I get that. But I think what's difficult is also like, because I think like as an ADHDer, like capacity tends to be lower more often than say like a neurotypical, and I think maybe this is where the autism, taking things literally, or like whatever cognitive rigidity is coming in, is where it's like, okay, but like, but then I'm not really loving them in like or even the majority of the time. So yeah, I think it's hard to like be okay with that.
Yeah, I think that might just be related to acceptance than anything else.
Yeah.
Because I think also what I'm hearing is that the areas where you might be thriving is more so through kind of like really deeper relationships. And so then that could be where you're called, right? Where you have these deeper relationships with people and where you minister to them because you have that deeper relationship. And I think like even if we are to literally our whole life to minister to one person to make sure that they don't, not make sure, but to kind of guide each other through like not veering off path or even bringing a person to Christ. Like it can literally be one person and that could be the purpose of your life. I don't know. I'm sure that there's oftentimes a lot more than that
Yeah,
from
yeah.
God's purpose.
Yeah.
But even if it is just one person, I feel like that's in a way good enough. Like, because it's not like you're intentionally not wanting to care. It's just that, you were made in a specific way, just like we each were. But to understand that this is your capacity and your capacity is to care in these ways. Or, sometimes you're okay with making small talk. And so those days you serve a bit more, right? But in other days, perhaps a big aspect of this is like learning to accept care too.
Yeah. I think it is also like I think a lot of me wants to be able to accept that. But then it's just like, oh, but then in the Gospels, Jesus says like, go and make disciples, and then like, oh, care for the widows and the poor. And I'm like, oh, but I'm not doing all that is.
Yeah, I don't know
So
a lot
it's
of widows around me.
like the widows and the poor, and like it's like we're like, because there's so many, I think, different commands of like where it's like different ways in which we're called to love others, and so it becomes like, because it's such a taking it so literally that it's like, oh, I have to do all of these,
Right.
where so it's like, I think fighting that like compulsion, that it's like, oh, I have to do all of these, and like trying to be able to let that go and see where it is that God specifically has called me. Because I know practically, like, it's literally impossible for someone to do all of that.
Yeah. And it's where you're called to.
Yeah, and like, and then there's also parts of the Bible where it's like, you know, that we're all like different parts of the body and which have our own roles and function. But.
And I think that passage of, like, you know, care for the widow, and I forgot what the other one was.
The poor,
and
the
the poor.
children.
Yeah, but I think, like, for me, what I get from that is more so the heart of it. So it's like, do you have a heart to serve other people and to care for the weak, care for the needy, care for the people who actually do need that support and help? In which I think you do.
Yeah.
Right, like, although generally speaking, I think that one thing that the church can do better is doing more external work rather than internal. I mean, both is needed, but yeah.
Like a balance, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, going back to kind of the...
big detour.
Yes, this big tangent. But it was a good conversation.
Yeah.
Where verse 9 is saying... let me pull up the ESV version. Solomon asked for, it says, "Give your servant, therefore, an understanding mind to govern your people, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to govern this, your great people?" And I feel like you can kind of just see that Solomon has a heart to serve, and he wants to do what is right by God.
Yeah. And that God sees that and gives him so much more.
Yeah, and the first, I guess, instance of him having been given wisdom is through the two prostitutes and that child.
Yeah.
Funny thing is, I've heard of the story before, but I didn't think that it was actually in the Bible.
Oh.
I think my mom told me the story, and I'm like, oh, that's smart. Yeah. Now I'm like, wait, it's from the Bible.
Yeah. This one especially
is
a pretty... I think this one is like one of the more, better known ones. Too.
Yeah, that's all I have to say about chapter 3. I would say, like, that his heart is in the right place, even though it's funny when, like, in the beginning where he's doing a whole lot of wrong things. Like,
yeah.
It's like, it's not small, but at the same time, I'm kind of curious to know whether he even knows that it's wrong, because it's kind of like where he was raised, the way that he was brought up, and it was, in a way, he was already living in a corrupt society.
Yeah. But I think he should have still had the, like, the instructions, like the Torah. So the law and, the law that is from, like, passed down from Moses. So I think there should have been some degree of knowing. But yeah, I think it is like a combo of, you know, the environment you grow up in, but then also your own responsibility to walk in God's ways. And
True.
Yeah.
And it was cool to see that it says, you know, that he specifically asked for a discerning heart, knowing right from wrong. Did he ask for wisdom here too? To give you a wise and discerning mind. So, and then the first instance of that wisdom, and then after the last verse, 28, and all Israel heard of the judgment that the king had rendered, and they stood in awe of the king, because they perceived that the wisdom of God was in him to do justice. Which is like, I don't know, it's just like in life in itself, where it's
Yeah.
kind of like you've asked God for something, like a gift or an ability to serve, like whatever you ask for, right? And then when it is like confirmed
Yeah.
by the people around you that you have that gift, I just think that is so cool to see that. And it makes it so real, you know, where it's like, no, God said that he gave him wisdom, and then people saw that he had wisdom.
And specifically that they saw that it was the wisdom of God.
Yeah.
So the glory goes back to God in the end.
Yeah, it's interesting how they automatically just say, oh, that he had wisdom from God. They just knew.
Yeah. I think to kind of go back, that I thought was pretty interesting, was when Solomon talks about when he's making his request, he talks about Israel as your people, and like great people too many to be numbered or counted for multitude. I think it's also, it kind of points back to like how in Genesis God promised Abraham that, like at that point, like Abraham didn't have a kid. He was like pretty old, and God was like, oh, like I will make of you like a nation, like who is a great multitude and a great people. So just like it's just in the way he said it, it just reminded me of like, oh yeah, and like even in that there's like just this kind of mini call out to like God's faithfulness to his promises in the past, and like this is also kind of continuing, because like in verse 3 it's like Solomon loved the Lord, walking the statutes of David his father, and that was kind of the whole promise from the last couple chapters of like if someone in David's family continues to walk in following God and walking in his ways, then God would ensure that there would always be someone from David's line on the throne. So it's kind of like this kind of background theme of like God's faithfulness and his promises. And then even like when he gives to Solomon, it's not just giving the thing that he's promised, but like giving in abundance.
Right.
And then even that one was also like in verse 14. It was kind of like, and if you'll walk in my ways, keeping my statutes, my commandments, as your father David walked, then I will lengthen your days. So just this continuation of like God is a God who is faithful, who fulfills his promises, who gives in abundance. But there's also like like the importance of our role in walking in God's ways and obeying him.
Yeah, that was a good point, because it's like God gave him what he asked for plus more. It does say specifically both riches and honor.
And long life.
Yeah, and a long life. So it's like God wants to bless us abundantly. It's not just like, okay, I'll give you a little bit, you know. No, like he literally wants to give us a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good chapter.
Yeah. Follow us for the next one as we continue on with this story.
Chapter 4.
Yeah.